Actually, this is some personal research I've been doing on some lineage on my mother's side. She's Italian, but the more I overturn something, it's the more interested I get into this because I don't have concrete evidence, but there's a lot of anecdotal indications that it's a true story. The story is that my great grandfather was the illegitimate son of a Duke of England, and I know it wouldn't be Scotland or Ireland. It would be one of the Dukes of England. And let me get on to some of the background on this because actually this is a while ago. This would have been during the time of Queen Victoria. You heard of the Victorian age? Now, to me, this is actually gets interesting, but maybe you will find it interesting because I can't drop names on here because it's the World Wide Web. But then again, it's got so many different angles and twists to this story that every time I look at something and I'm thinking, wait a minute, maybe somebody screwed up, and then I say, wait a minute, no, this confirms that. That's what I keep coming up with, and it's got me interested in it as a puzzle. Now I know you can use online records, and you pay money, and I pay money, and the online records don't tell you a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to order original records from the UK on marriage and birth certificates on my Italian side and see what is going on, if that reveals anything. Who the Duke was, because I heard he actually applied for it, and he didn't get it, though, obviously. But he actually did very well in the United States. I'll show you his picture. He looked like an Englishman. There's only one, I don't want to say the name, because there's only one name like that has been Italianized from a British name. And anybody that's that name is a relative of mine. I'm not putting that out on the World Wide Web, but I can tell you, this may be of interest of people, but maybe not. But it's just been bugging the hell out of me. But just give you a little background on Queen Victoria. Her reign was 63 years and 7 months, which is longer than any of the other British monarchs, and the longest of any female monarch in history ever. So she was the longest reigning British monarch and the longest reigning female monarch worldwide. So that was known as the Victorian era, and it was partly because of basically her stance on morality. You know, really, that's where the Victorian era is named after Queen Victoria. It was the time of when the UK was at its zenith. It was at its greatest expansion of the British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. This was actually the time. Well, when he was over there, I don't want to say his name or nothing because it's like it's unique. It's too unique, and I'm not putting that information on the World Wide Web. But anyway, she was the last British monarch of the House of Hanover. Now, I was searching all these different branches online with the, British monarchs, and just I am like, I'm just lost. I could tell you, I'm just lost. But I do know that on one side there was well, my great grandfather was married in central London. He was married there. He was the illegitimate son of a duke, so he was half English. And I'll show you his picture in a couple minutes. His wife was Italian. I don't want to say her name. She was Italian. He was born in Italy. He was the illegitimate son of a duke. It was northern Italy. And actually, my mother went to northern Italy in the area and everything not long ago. And she was I'll tell you a little bit about that story. But he was married in England, in the UK, in London. Okay, I think in excuse me, he was in Brentford, I believe it was, West London, and his first daughter was born in London. I'm not going to say the exact year, and that would have been my great aunt in the early 1990s in central London. Then my great uncle was born in West London, Brentford. I don't know, maybe near High Street. I'm not sure. I've never been there, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly, I mean, I work with British people here in the USA, but I've never been to London. But I'm not clear on exactly every detail. So I know he was living there for years. Then my grandmother was born in northern Italy. After he lived, my great grandfather was living in the UK in London for years with his Italian wife. My grandmother was then born in Italy. Then he went back to, and this is his picture, he went back to the London, the UK, in 1901, and he was actually on the British census. I know that's a fact because I'm looking at hardcore documents, birth dates, where they were born. Now, I don't have the actual hard copies of this stuff, and I'm going to try to order them from England, and also marriage records. Now, the online records just kind of tell you not too much. That's what's not cool about it. You pay, like I pay for a subscription service, then you pay an additional money for this. Then I look at this, and it's like, it didn't tell me anything. What I'm hoping is that his marriage record to his wife in UK may state, well, it should state her maiden name, but the other thing is, if they still have it, hopefully it might state his parents' name, the Duke, so I can figure out if it's a true story or not. But then I'm thinking, it might be true because he was living there for, I know, guaranteed for at least 8 years, and then he went to Italy for about a year. And my grandmother learned how to speaking Italian. She came over to this country later in the early 1900s. She was speaking Italian, and she must have learned Italian from her father or maybe her mother. That would have been my great grandmother. But they were living in England. They were living in the UK, and they went to Italy for maybe a year. Then my grandmother was born, and they went back to the UK. Then a few years later, they went to the United States. Now, this guy actually did very well in the United States. He actually owned an entire block in Bayonne, New Jersey, in the 20s and 30s, an entire city block. He actually did very well. He was not stupid. I'll tell you that right now. But if you're looking at his features, you would never think he was an Italian guy. He looks British. He looks the spitting image of British all the way. So, the mystery is like, I got anecdotal evidence that, he was living there for so many years. He was married there, although his wife was Italian. He was married there. I don't want to say her name. And there's even crazier stuff involved than this that I don't want to get into that you wouldn't believe. But it was all during the Queen Victoria era. So she was queen from 1837. She was incarnated when she was 18 years old in 1837, and she was the Queen of England from 1837 up until the time she died in 1901. And then my great grandfather was back in England. He was there all through like the 1890s. And briefly, he went back to Italy. My grandmother was born in Italy, northern Italy. And then he went back to England, and he shows up on the census. If you show up on the census, that means you're living there. You're not there on a vacation. They don't count people as, a census. I don't even know what his citizenship was then. I would imagine he would have probably been a citizen of Great Britain. Even though he was half Italian heritage from his mother's side. He definitely, undoubtedly, I would almost say he would have had to have been a citizen of Great Britain. He would have had to been to be living there that long. I would like to know what his occupation was, and I'm going to be digging into this information by trying to get some actual records because nobody's ever figured this out, and it's amazing how they lose this information. But the story is that he was applying for the dukeship, and he didn't get it. Maybe because he was married to an Italian wife. I don't know. I really don't know, man. I have no idea. But he did very well in the United States. Actually, when my mother was back in Italy um, like a year ago. Um, I'm not going to say it's in this section right here, the Piedmont, which is up near France. It's actually a very mountainous part of Italy, and I'll tell you what. Well, I don't know. I just love big. Actually, my family. I got family from northern Italy and southern Italy. Different different scopes, man. I mean, they got the north and the south in Italy, like they got the north and south in the USA. But anyway, in northern Italy, there's um, I don't know. It's an extremely clean place. The people are very tall, generally speaking. Um, it's like you wouldn't think of it as the typical Italian that a lot of times people think of. Um, the other thing is, they were very, very friendly. Actually, the police took them around. My mother took them all around to the church where my grandmother was probably born and baptized. They did a great effort to even look for records, but there was two world wars, and a lot of things got destroyed. So, probably my best hope to find information might be in London. But it looks like, considering that my great aunt and my great uncle were both born in London, and my great grandfather, um, my great uncle and great aunt, my great grandfather was married in London, not to an English woman, but to an Italian woman, and he lived there for. I can actually establish that he lived there at least through the 1890s, and I can't establish. I know in 1901 there was a brief period where he went back to England, to Italy, and my grandmother was born, and from there he came to the United States in the early 1900s. Now, I don't know if it was directly from Italy or directly from England. Maybe it was from Italy. I think it was from Italy. But he was definitely in the UK on the census, living in England again. And it might have been when Queen Victoria died, because he was applying for that dukeship. That's what the story is. But it's amazing how I can't find this information out that easily. But actually, I could look up information on other members of my family that I can't find. Excuse me, and I can't find, but I have the information because I actually have their log books and their military records and their diaries and all that type of stuff. It's just not online, you know. So, but I'd assume that the British records are still intact. I mean, I'm sure the Luftwaffe didn't blow up London that bad. I think the records are still there from the late 1800s of two births, and also maybe even the census, maybe more details on the census record, and also his marriage. But I'm particularly interested in his marriage record, because I think, not all the time, but many times, a marriage record would state who the parents of the husband are, and that would reveal the name. But they don't always. Just like birth certificates don't always name who your parents are. Sometimes they just say your name and your date, and that's the way it is. But hopefully the British got it all straight. But just looking at him and looking at his physical features, let's put this out as his interest. Maybe it's more a story interesting to me only, but it's been puzzling the hell out of me. But if you're looking at his physical features, maybe that's too blown up, but you could see he looks British all the way. And he was a lot taller than the rest of the Italian people in the family. He's much taller. But he looks British all the way. And he was an extremely intelligent man. And he did acquire a great amount of wealth in the United States. He owned an entire block in Bayonne, New Jersey. Up until the time he died, but he accumulated all that wealth from the time he came here in the early 1900s. By the time it was in the 1930s, he owned an entire, inside of a couple decades, he owned, or less than 3 decades, maybe 25 years, he owned an entire block in Bayonne, New Jersey. But he definitely was not stupid, that's for sure. Now, I don't want to get into too more details on that, but I'm going to find out, if hopefully that record does state, and I'm going to try to order that from the UK and see what happens. And, it's pretty interesting because, it's quite a labyrinth when you go back and you look at things, but there's a lot of stories involved with some of this stuff, and I probably don't want to put all of it out on the internet, but it's an interesting thing because most people that come from Italy do not have British heritage that much, and it seems like he had British heritage from the monarch itself, from the monarchy. So anyway, it's probably taking me a while to get this. I don't know if it's going to be I'm going to be able to get it, but I got so much anecdotal evidence. I just want to repeat it again that I do know that he was married in London. His wife was Italian. He was born in Italy. His father was English. Supposedly, his father was a duke. He was illegitimate. His last name was changed and Italianized to make it sound somewhat like the duke's name, and it's a very unique name. And I want to put it out here on the World Wide Web. But he was married in England. Italian bride. He must have been living in England before this. I don't know what happened when he arrived in England. Maybe there's other records or some way you can look that up. Maybe I gotta go right to the UK and figure this out. And maybe it's not on the World Wide Web or any of the genealogy subscription services, which I keep paying for, and they don't seem to have everything I need. His first daughter was born in the UK in central London. His first son, which had been his second child, was born in the UK in West London. Then his second daughter was born in Italy, but then immediately thereafter, in 1901, he was back in the UK in London, and it must have been due to Queen Victoria dying in 1901. So anyway, this is going to be interesting to try to figure this one out, but I'm a stickler for details, and if I'm highly suspecting the story to be accurate, because why the hell would he have been in London for 10 years? And why would he go back to London specifically on 1901 when Queen Victoria died? That makes me think there was a change in succession of, a whole shakeup in the monarchy. And that goes along with the story where he was applying for the dukeship, but he didn't get it because, probably somebody was not illegitimate or whatever it was, so he didn't get it. And I'm sure having the last name he had, I guess if the Italians would have adopted the actual name, it probably would have helped too. But anyway, he did very, very, very well in the United States. Like I said, in 25 years, he accumulated an entire block in the city of Bayonne. So, but you look at him, he's got the spitting image of a British citizen from London. Irvine, the whole 9 yards,